Now, I often get asked many questions about test day. Questions such as, what do we do on test day? What do we expect? Do we take anything with us? And are there any tips that you would suggest? Well, don't worry, because in this video, we will cover all those questions and I will include timestamps in the description below. So feel free to skip around to any part of the video. And remember, towards the end of this video, we will talk about some tips that will help you on test day. So let's get started. Okay, so we will start this video by talking about getting to the test center. So we're talking about before the test even starts, way before you even arrive at the test center. So before you even leave for the test center, okay, you should do a few things, okay? The first thing that you should do is check the timing of your test. Really, you should be doing this like a week in advance if you can, minimum, okay? But on the test day or the night before, you want to double check the time of your actual exam and also check how long it will take you to get there. Okay, so before the test, okay, there's a few things that we should be doing, okay? And really we can do this either the night before the test, okay? Or if you really want to be safe, and this is what I suggest, is that you do this like a week in advance. So you want to check a couple of things. The first thing that you should check is the time of your actual exam. And double check this. So once you receive your confirmation, your time of your exam will be stated there. So check this before you leave for your exam. And the second thing that you should check is how long it will take you to get to the test center. Okay, now just say it takes you 45 minutes to get there, right? That does not mean if your exam starts at 9 a.m. then you leave at 8:15. No, you want to leave at least 15 minutes early, at least. And the reason for that is that you might get stuck in traffic, things might get in the way, but more importantly, when you arrive at the test center, it can take a bit of time to get all your details out or to get to the correct floor, the correct location. So again, if it takes you around 45 minutes to get there, we want to be leaving around 1 hour before or 1 hour 15 minutes before, okay? And also, just before I forget, the test center that is written on your confirmation, double check that center correctly because it might be different to the location that you booked when you booked it online. So just double check it's the correct location. You don't want to be going to the wrong location. So these things we want to double check before we get to the test center. Now let's talk about what happens when you arrive at the IELTS test center. So there are 5 things that you should do when you arrive at the test center. So the first thing that you should do is make sure you have read the terms and conditions of the IELTS test. So this will be given to you, and this is important because the terms and conditions will tell you everything that you need to know about the test itself. And you can normally find this information in the test takes information part of your application. Okay, now the second thing to talk about is what happens if you arrive late at the test center, okay? Now, according to the IDP website, unfortunately, you might not be able to take your test. So again, this is why it is so important to arrive early. And the third thing that you need to be made aware of, and this is common sense, and that is to turn your mobile phone off, okay? So once you arrive at the test center, what will happen is that you will be asked to turn your mobile phone off, and there will be somebody who works in the test center who will take your electronics, they will take your belongings. So they might take your mobile phone, if you have an electronic watch, or I think any watch actually, they may take that off you, and they will put all this together in a safe place whilst you take your test. And then once your test is over, you will be allowed to collect your items. But just make sure that your mobile phone is switched off. And the fourth thing that you should know is that, you might already know this, but just in case you don't, is that the listening, reading and writing exam is all taken one after the other without any breaks. So if you do need to go to the toilet, try to do this before your exam. The last thing you want to do is ask to go to the toilet during the listening part of the exam, especially because the listening you will only hear once, okay? So make sure you go to the bathroom before the actual test, and also there is no food or drink allowed. And remember, the listening, reading and writing part of the exam, altogether it lasts for 2 hours and 40 minutes. So you will not have any food for this amount of time. So if you know you are going to feel hungry, try to eat or drink something before. Now, there's no food or drink allowed in the test center, but we are allowed water. And that's the fifth thing that we need to know. We are allowed to take water to the test with us. However, we are only allowed to take water with us if it is in a clear bottle. So not if it is in a bottle that we cannot see what is inside, like the images on your screen, okay? It must be in a clear bottle. Now let's talk about what most people worry about, and that is your identity documents. So this is an important one. Now, the staff at the IELTS Test Center, they will check your identity, and they will check this by looking at your documents. So what documents should you take? Well, this again will be sent to you in your confirmation. So this is why it's important to read the confirmation way before your exam. Make sure you take the correct documentation with you. So have that prepared the night before at least, okay? And if you do not have the correct ID, you may not be allowed to take your test. So this is very important. And also the next point, it doesn't apply to everyone. It depends on which country you are taking the test in. But some test centers in different countries, they may request to take a photo of you as an additional form of ID. Now, as an extra security measure, the staff at the IELTS Test Center, they will take a photograph of you. And this photo will be used in your test report, okay? Now, the next point, and this doesn't apply to everyone, it depends on which country you are taking the test in, but the staff may request to get a copy of your fingerprint, okay? But again, that depends on which country you are in. So that's not for everyone. Okay, so we've talked about what happens before you even leave for the test center. We've talked about arriving at the test center, the documentation. Now let's talk about the instructions that you need to follow during the IELTS test. So again, there are 5 points for this section, and let's start with the first point, and that is bring the correct things to the test. And these are a pencil, a pen, an eraser, and your ID. And during your test, the staff, they are called invigilators. So an invigilator is somebody who walks up and down the test, just checking if everyone's safe, checking if everyone's carrying on with their tasks and nobody's cheating. The invigilator will ask you to place all these items on your desk. Okay, now the second point is during your test, we briefly talked about this earlier, and that was that the listening, reading and writing all happen in one go, right? One after the other, without any breaks. So there is a chance that you might need to go to the toilet. So what happens if you do need to go to the bathroom? Well, in that case, you will raise your hand, okay? And an invigilator will come to you, and you will just tell them that, look, I need to go to the bathroom, and they will then take you to the bathroom. They will wait outside, and then once you leave the bathroom, they will take you back to your seat, okay? Again, really, we want to avoid going to the bathroom during our test, because you will not be allowed to add any extra minutes that you missed. So for example, if you spend 5 minutes in the bathroom, that does not mean that you will get your 5 minutes back at the end, okay? Whatever time you get out, you've missed. So again, try to go to the bathroom before your test. And talking about not going to the toilet, especially during the listening test, that brings us to the third point, and that is that when the listening section of the exam starts, make sure you can hear the audio correctly. If you cannot, you need to raise this very quickly. And how can we do this? Again, just raise your hand, an invigilator will come to you, and then you can explain to the invigilator that you cannot hear the audio correctly. Now, some test centers, and I think this might depend on whether you take the computer or the paper-based exam, you might have headphones on, okay? So the same thing applies. Maybe you cannot hear the audio clearly with your headphones. If that is the case, raise your hand and let the invigilator know. Okay, and the fourth thing is, again, it's related to the listening section of the exam, and this only applies to the paper-based exam. And that is that you will have 30 minutes to complete the listening section of your exam. Then, once that 30 minutes is over, you will be given an additional 10 minutes. Those additional 10 minutes, they are for you to transfer your answers from your question sheet to your answer sheet. And it is your answer sheet that will be marked, not your question sheet. That means that you need to make sure that you have correctly copied the answers over. For example, you do not want to copy out the answer for question 1 and accidentally write it under question 2's answer. So make sure you do this carefully. And the final point that I would like to talk about is what happens if you have a question. Again, the same thing. Just raise your hand, an invigilator will come to you and you can ask your question. However, it is very important to know, and it is common sense, that they cannot answer any questions about the exam, okay? The exam is an exam, it's for you, okay? It's to test your knowledge. So please do not ask any questions about the exam itself, okay? Really, other than going to the bathroom or the audio, not being able to hear it, there's probably not any other questions that you will need to ask. But if there are, just put your hand up and an invigilator will come to you. Okay, and that leads us to the next part, and that is what happens at the end of the test. So once your test is complete and finished, the invigilators will ask you to remain in your seats up until they give you permission to leave. So once they give you permission, you will be allowed to get up, take your things and leave the exam hall. And if you, for whatever reason, have a complaint about the IELTS test or anything relating to the test itself, for example, maybe something happened that day with a staff member or anything like that, hopefully this will not happen. But if it does, then you can raise a complaint. Now, if you do raise a complaint, you need to do this within a week of your exam, okay? And how can we raise a complaint? By filling in the complaints form. So if you ask the staff members at the test center, they will guide you on how you can get access to the complaint form. And also, this question gets asked a lot, and that is that what happens if you have any special arrangements. So for example, if you have requested for any specific arrangements because of a disability or any other condition, then these adjustments should be made for you on your test day, okay? So if you do have any special requests, please let the staff at the test center know before your test, okay? What I would do is probably ring in a few days before your exam, just to make them aware, okay? You don't just want to arrive there and then tell them, and they might not be able to cater to your needs. So let them know and give the staff there some notice about any arrangements that you might have because of a medical condition or a disability that you might have. Now let's talk about some tips that you can use on test day. So the first thing is relax, okay? And we want to relax. Why? Because we want to be in a state of calmness during our exam, okay? It's the best way to carry out an exam. You don't want to be nervous, okay? Naturally, you might be nervous, that's fine. But to calm our nerves down, try to relax. One way we can do this, okay, is just practice beforehand. So if you practice over and over again by taking practice tests, when it comes to your actual test, it will just be like another practice test for you, okay? Another thing that you can do is just go for a walk just before you arrive at the test center. A third thing that you can do during your test, okay, is just take deep breaths. So we really want to focus on trying to relax throughout the exam. This can be a little bit more difficult in the speaking exam, and that's because you will be one-to-one with an examiner, okay? So it's not like the rest of the exam where there'll be no examiner in front of you. So I understand that this might be difficult, but wherever you can, try to remain relaxed, and this will help you focus. The second tip is to follow the instructions, okay? Now this might sound like a silly tip, okay? Now I've mentioned both of these tips by purpose. So you want to relax and follow the instructions. Why have I mentioned these 2 points? Because when it comes to your test day, people forget the basics. So follow the instructions carefully. For example, if in one of the questions it asks you to give no more than 1 word, okay? It is important to not give a 2-word answer because you will not get the mark. So remember, always read the instructions carefully. And the third tip is, and this is the one that I think most people probably forget, and that is to keep an eye out for the time. And this is especially the case for the writing exam. So for the writing exam, you will be given 60 minutes. Now, within those 60 minutes, you will need to complete 2 tasks, okay? It is up to you to manage that time yourself, okay? Writing task 1, okay, it is suggested that you spend 20 minutes on this, and the remaining 40 minutes should be spent on writing task 2. So it's up to you to manage your time. Just check the time constantly. There will be a clock in the exam. If there's not, you need to raise this with an invigilator, but always check the time and see if you are on track. And also, we can talk about this in a bit more detail. So for example, even if you're on writing task 2, you've completed the 20 minutes on writing task 1, you're on writing task 2, those remaining 40 minutes you need to manage. So I've got many videos on how to manage your time and how to answer writing task 1 and task 2 questions, and you can click on those videos next by clicking on this link here, and I will see you in the next video. Don't forget to subscribe, and bye bye.